60%. That is how much of the contiguous United States entered this summer already in drought. And now, right now, as of this morning, the same country that was bone dry is getting hammered by one of the most hyperactive June severe weather stretches in recorded history. Flash flooding across the Central Plains, tornado outbreaks from Illinois to Indiana, dangerous heat index values pushing 110 degrees across the southern tier, and underneath all of it, a force that is rewriting the rules, a developing El Niño event that NOAA now says has a 63% chance of reaching very strong or Super El Niño status by autumn. The summer you thought you were going to have. It is not this summer, not even close. And before we get into the data, I need you to understand the full scope of what is happening right now. The storm setups I'm going to walk you through today, the heat building across the west and the southern plains, and the long-range El Niño signal I have been watching all month are not separate stories. They are the same story. They are all connected to one massive atmospheric reorganization that is already underway. By the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly why this summer is fundamentally different from anything we have experienced in years and what that means for your community in July, in August and beyond. I am Arthur, and this is Sky Space Lab. If you have not subscribed yet, hit that button right now, because what we are tracking over the next 30 days is going to demand daily attention. Turn on notifications. The data I'm about to walk you through is moving fast. Let us get into it. Here is what the Weather Prediction Center issued just this morning, dated June 23, 2026. A frontal boundary is draped from the northeast all the way southwest into the high plains. Two specific corridors are being flagged for flash flooding and severe weather today and into tonight. The first runs from Delaware and the Delmarva Peninsula south through the coastal Carolinas. The second, and this is the one I am watching most closely this afternoon, stretches from the mid-Mississippi Valley out into the central and southern high plains. That is an enormous zone of risk. It covers cities that have already taken significant impacts this week, and the threat is not over yet. Here is who needs to watch this the most today: Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Little Rock, Memphis, Joplin, and anyone sitting from southern Kansas through northern Louisiana. That arc is where the Storm Prediction Center sees the most favorable overlap of moisture, instability, and mid-level forcing this afternoon and evening. The GFS and the European model have been in reasonable agreement on where the heaviest convection fires. Deep layer shear values are running around 45 to 50 knots across much of this corridor, enough to support rotating supercells before storms upscale into organized squall lines by this evening. The question is not whether storms develop. The question is how dangerous they get before they grow upscale. The primary threats today are large hail, damaging wind gusts, and localized flash flooding. Let me give you specific numbers because numbers always beat vague language. Hailstones in the 1 to 2 inch range are possible across the most favored zones this afternoon. Isolated supercells in the best thermodynamic environments could push hail to 2.5 or 3 inches before losing their discrete organization. Wind gusts from developing squall lines could approach 60 to 65 miles per hour across Arkansas and into western Tennessee by tonight. And we're talking about 3,000 to 3,500 joules per kilogram of CAPE across the arc latex region this afternoon. That is a serious fuel load for dangerous storms. The Storm Prediction Center also noted that a mesoscale convective vortex, an MCV, is expected to emerge from a morning MCS over the southern plains and move eastward toward the mid-south region through the afternoon. As that MCV moves through a very warm and moist environment, storm development is expected both along the MCV track and in the wake of the MCV along a trailing cold front. Guidance varies regarding the strength of low-level shear enhancement associated with the MCV, but some tornado potential could also evolve through the afternoon into early evening. I would not rule out a tornado or two today, particularly in the window between 3 and 7 this evening as supercells develop before upscaling. If you're in Wichita, Joplin, or Springfield, Missouri, you need to have your severe weather plan ready right now, not later this afternoon, right now. The overnight picture keeps the threat alive into Wednesday morning. The Weather Prediction Center noted that an ongoing convective complex near the Ark-La-Tex region and the Red River Basin could produce additional heavy rain through early Wednesday. Some areas in that corridor have already picked up 1 to 2 inches from overnight convection in recent days, and saturated topsoil layers mean flash flooding thresholds are going to be easier to hit on the next round. Precipitable water values at 1.75 to 2 inches or higher are stretching toward the central Gulf Coast per the latest WPC excessive rainfall discussion. That level of atmospheric moisture combined with training thunderstorms is the recipe for significant flash flooding events. The WPC slight risk of excessive rainfall covers much of this same zone through Wednesday and into Thursday. Where are you watching all of this from? Drop your city in the comments right now and let me know whether you have already seen storms this week or if you are still waiting for your area to get hit. I want to hear from viewers across the entire storm zone. This has been one of the most geographically widespread active weather patterns I have tracked in years. A quick note before we move to the weekly outlook. If you are in one of these storm zones right now, I want you to have multiple ways to receive severe weather warnings. The NWS wireless emergency alerts through your cell phone are your most immediate option. A NOAA weather radio is the best backup, and make sure everyone in your household knows where your shelter location is before storm season gets any more active. We have already seen what this pattern can do across the Midwest and the Plains this month. Preparing before a warning is issued is always the right call. Tomorrow, June 24th, the setup looks similar but shifts slightly eastward. The upper-level pattern does not change dramatically through midweek. A quasi-stationary frontal boundary keeps moisture funneled into the same general region. The biggest concern Wednesday becomes less about supercells and more about training thunderstorms, storms that move repeatedly over the same geographic area and stack rainfall totals that can easily reach 3 to 4 inches in a matter of hours. The Tennessee Valley and Lower Ohio Valley need to watch this closely Wednesday and into Wednesday night. Locally, areas that already received significant rain earlier this week are most vulnerable to flash flooding on the next round. There is a slight risk of excessive rainfall from the WPC for the central and southern plains extending into Wednesday, and a separate slight risk continues through Thursday over portions of the central plains. The WPC excessive rainfall discussion specifically noted that the upper-level pattern will be quite diffluent over the area, meaning that guidance shows perturbations within that diffluent upper flow while also showing a maximum precipitable water axis of 1.75 to 2 inches stretching toward the central Gulf Coast. That is a substantial moisture footprint. On Thursday, June 25th, the pattern makes an important move. A new shortwave trough amplifying across the northwestern United States pushes eastward and helps generate a new organized low-pressure system emerging from the Rockies into the central and northern plains. The Storm Prediction Center Day 4 through 8 extended discussion highlighted northern Colorado into eastern Wyoming and far southwestern South Dakota as the target zone Thursday, where upslope flow strengthens as a surface low deepens across the southern high plains. A passing mid-level jet streak combines with that shortwave trough to create the supercell environment. The SPC discussion noted nearly 50 knots of mid-level flow combined with moderate to strong instability. Large to very large hail will be the primary threat Thursday. An isolated tornado or two is possible in the most favoured zones north of Denver and into the Cheyenne corridor through Thursday afternoon. By Friday and Saturday, June 26th and 27th, the European ensemble suggests the new low tracks northeastward into the upper Midwest. A potent cold front follows it across the plains. Both the GFS and the European model show Friday through Sunday as the next organised window for severe weather from the Dakotas through Minnesota and into northern Iowa. Fargo, Sioux Falls, Rapid City, and the Minneapolis Metro all need to be watching this weekend. That region already took repeated beatings in the June 11th and June 17th outbreaks earlier this month. The NWS extended forecast discussion confirmed that a respectable trough would be forecast over the northern Rockies and northern plains this weekend before reloading back over the Pacific Northwest into week 2. The WPC extended forecast discussion for Thursday, June 25th through Monday, June 29th explicitly confirmed that the amplifying trough over the northwestern quadrant of the country will support an organised low-pressure system emerging from the Rockies to the central and northern plains, with a relatively potent cold front crossing the Pacific Northwest and the Intermountain West. That cold front is the mechanism for the next organised severe weather round to the northern plains this weekend. We are not done with this active pattern, not close to done. And here is what makes this pattern different from a normal stretch of active weather. The pattern is cycling, not ending. After this weekend system passes, the trough reloads over the Pacific Northwest, and the next disturbance sets up. The CPC Week 2 outlook for June 30th through July 6th already shows the pattern maintaining a trough near the west coast, while a ridge expands across the central and eastern CONUS, with troughs continuing to fire shortwave disturbances into the plains repeatedly through the first week of July. This is not a one-week event. This is the signature of a summer that is going to stay active because of the large-scale forcing that is now locked in. Looking at the GFS ensemble mean through the extended period, the signal for persistent instability over the northern plains through the final week of June is very clear. Multiple ensemble members are showing surface low development east of the Rockies on both Friday and again early next week. That back-to-back system track is what the CPC Week 2 outlook is capturing in its broad guidance. When you have consecutive surface low pressure systems tracking similar corridors, each one activates the low-level jet and draws Gulf moisture northward, and each one can produce a fresh round of severe weather. The Dakotas, Nebraska, Minnesota, and Iowa are all in that recurring target zone through the end of June. This is the time of year those states need to be weather-aware every single day. But here is where it gets really interesting, and I will show you exactly why in just a moment. Something worth pausing on before I get to the big picture. From June 1st through June 16th alone, the United States recorded its second fastest start for damaging straight-line wind reports since comprehensive records began in 1955. Only the legendary hyperactive June of 2008 logged more wind damage reports in the same opening 16-day window. If the upcoming weeks remain this highly charged, atmospheric experts believe 2026 stands a legitimate chance at challenging the all-time full-month June record of 5,554 wind reports. The Storm Prediction Center has outlooked the NWS, Chicago forecast area for severe weather on 15 days so far this year, including an unusual number of Level 3 enhanced or higher risk days. The corridor from eastern Iowa into southern Wisconsin and northern Illinois has been remarkably, almost eerily active. This pattern is not random. It reflects a fundamental shift in how the large-scale atmospheric circulation is organizing this summer. There is a reason for all of it. And it is the biggest atmospheric story of the entire 2026 season. NOAA officially declared El Niño conditions on June 11th, 2026. The Nino 3.4 monitoring region of the equatorial Pacific is already running significantly above average for this time of year. Sea surface temperatures in that zone surged sharply over the last several months. NOAA forecasters at the Climate Prediction Center put the probability of sea surface temperatures in the monitoring region exceeding 2 degrees Celsius above normal at 63%. That is the threshold for what NOAA classifies as a very strong event. That is also what the broader meteorological community refers to as a Super El Niño, 63%. I want to sit with that number for a moment. That is not a tail risk on a probability distribution. That is the single most likely scenario according to NOAA's own modelling teams right now. And when I look at the World Meteorological Organization multi-model super ensemble, updated just 3 weeks ago, the picture is even more striking. The WMO report gave an 80% likelihood of El Niño persisting through August, with probabilities of continuation near or above 90% into November. Every single international model ensemble in their latest super ensemble run was depicting at least a strong event. 11 out of 13 showed a high-end Super El Niño signature. This is the strongest model consensus I have seen for a developing ENSO event at this lead time in recent memory. For comparison, let me give you the history that matters here. The analog years that Colorado State University and the Climate Prediction Center have identified for this developing pattern include 1997, 2015, and 1982. The 1997 and 2015 Super El Niño events reshaped global weather patterns for months. Both produced record warmth and dramatically altered jet stream positioning. Both left multi-year hydrological signatures across the western United States and well beyond. Now look at what the June 2026 Super Ensemble is saying. 8 of the 13 global modelling centres in the latest Super Ensemble are projecting an event that exceeds the 1982 to 1983 historical maximum. If those models verify, and the trend has been towards stronger forecasts for months now, we would be looking at potentially the strongest El Niño in the modern satellite record. Think carefully about what that statement means for the rest of this year. I have been watching ENSO signals for a long time. What I am seeing right now, in terms of model consensus, oceanic data, and the atmospheric response already emerging, is one of the strongest combined signals I have tracked leading into a summer season. And critically, it is already showing up in the weather you are experiencing right now. The subtropical jet, that belt of strong upper-level winds across the southern United States, is already running stronger than average due to the warming Pacific. When you have a stronger subtropical jet across the southern portion of the country, you get enhanced moisture transport, increased convective activity, and a persistently active southern storm track. That matches exactly what we're seeing this week from Texas, through the Ohio Valley and up into the Great Lakes. The Climate Impact Company constructed analog forecasts for June specifically showed pieces of tropical moisture being ejected northeastward by the subtropical jet to fuel a wet early summer across the Midwest and into the Northeast. That forecast is verifying almost precisely right now. The pattern that produced the tornado outbreaks in Illinois and Indiana in June, the flash flooding from Kansas to Missouri, the near-record wind damage reports, was not random. It was the first visible atmospheric fingerprint of a developing Super El Niño reorganizing the large-scale circulation. The NASA sea level rise data in the tropical Pacific, updated this month, confirmed that the oceanic Kelvin wave that built subsurface heat for weeks is now surfacing in the eastern Pacific. That is the heat release driving the rapid intensification of the El Niño signal in the atmosphere right now. It also means this event does not peak and quickly fade. Strong El Niño events tend to reach maximum intensity in November through January. The summer of 2026 is the opening act, not the climax. Now let me take you deeper into what the El Niño signal actually looks like in the real-time atmosphere right now, because this is the part that most channels are not showing you. The Nino 3.4 sea surface temperature anomaly index has already surged past the positive 1 degree Celsius level. The Climate Prediction Center's June diagnostic discussion stated that El Niño conditions are present and expected to strengthen into the Northern Hemisphere winter of 2026 to 2027. But look past the official NOAA numbers for a moment and look at the subsurface. The subsurface ocean temperatures across the equatorial Pacific, the heat stored below the surface that has not yet made it to the top layer, are extraordinary. The oceanic Kelvin wave that has been transporting warm water eastward across the Pacific for the last several months is now surfacing. Sea level in the eastern tropical Pacific is rising because of the warm water displacement. What is below the surface today becomes the surface temperature in the coming weeks. The reservoir of heat in the Pacific is enormous, and it has not finished releasing yet. The IRI Columbia University Ensemble ENSO forecast, updated this month, shows the median forecast trajectory pushing strongly toward very strong El Niño status by late summer and a Super El Niño signal by early fall. The ECMWF Ensemble forecast for the Nino 3.4 region shows anomalies exceeding +3 degrees Celsius in the peak forecast period. +3 degrees, that is in the range of the 1997 to 1998 event, which remains the strongest El Niño in the reliable record prior to 2026. If this event reaches or exceeds that level, the impacts on global weather patterns through next winter will be profound and sustained. I also want to note that the western drought picture heading into summer is itself a product of the same large-scale atmospheric pattern. The Climate Impact Company specifically identified drought expanding northwestward in the west and developing in the mid-south to Texas later in the summer season. 60% of the contiguous United States in drought at the start of meteorological summer is a staggering number. The active plains severe weather and the Gulf moisture being drawn northward by the low-level jet are providing some rainfall relief in the central tier, but the western drought is deepening, not improving, and the forecast through August does not show meaningful relief for the northwest or the interior west. Now let me give you the regional breakdown of what a developing Super El Niño means for the rest of this summer, because the picture is very different depending on where you live. For the Pacific Northwest, the ECMWF long-range forecast for July through September shows above-average temperatures across the entire continental map, with the strongest anomalies right over the northwest and western Canada. That means elevated probability of amplified or blocking high-pressure ridges producing dangerous heat waves. AccuWeather's Brandon Buckingham specifically flagged Northwest and Great Basin wildfire risk as destructive this summer, with drought expected to worsen in those regions throughout the season. If you are in Portland, Spokane, Boise, or Salt Lake City, your summer is going to be defined by heat and fire risk. Climate Impact Company's updated summer outlook showed a hot and dry northwest through July and August, with the upper ridge pattern fueling anomalous warmth extending towards southwest Canada. For the Central Plains and Mississippi Valley, the wetter-than-normal signal through June and July driven by the subtropical jet enhancement will eventually flip. By August, both CPC and Climate Impact Company see dryness creeping back into the southern plains and eventually the mid-south. The very same El Niño pumping moisture into Texas and Arkansas right now will redirect that signal toward the end of summer. Communities flooded today potentially facing developing drought conditions by September. That is the seasonal whipsaw that a strong El Niño can produce, and we have seen it before in the analog years. For the Atlantic hurricane season, El Niño is the controlling signal right now. Colorado State University updated their forecast on June 10th to call for up to 11 named storms, 5 hurricanes, and 2 major hurricanes. That puts seasonal activity around 60% of a normal year. CSU's Phil Klotzbach specifically noted that analog seasons all featured below-average Atlantic activity. The mechanism is vertical wind shear increasing across the tropical Atlantic, the same shear that tears developing systems apart before they can organize into major storms. The Gulf Coast and the Atlantic seaboard face a below-average hurricane threat this season. Before we wrap up, there is one more thing you need to know, and this is the part I've been building toward this entire video. The Week 2 outlook from the Climate Prediction Center, covering June 30th through July 6th, may be the single most consequential forecast window of the entire 2026 summer. The GEFS, the European Ensemble, and the Canadian CMCE are all projecting the same broad pattern for that period. A ridge over the east central Pacific, a trough near the west coast, and then the dominant feature, a large upper-level ridge covering most of the remaining contiguous United States. A weak trough sitting off the Atlantic coast completes the circulation picture. Think carefully about what that setup produces spatially. The Pacific trough keeps the west coast relatively active with some disturbances, but the continental ridge becomes the primary atmospheric control everywhere east of the Rockies. That ridge, combined with the El Niño-enhanced subtropical jet, creates the conditions AccuWeather and Climate Impact Company both specifically flagged for July and August: hazardous heat expanding from the southern plains toward the Midwest and Ohio Valley. Heat index values approaching 110 to 115 degrees in Dallas, Oklahoma City, and Little Rock. Temperatures in Phoenix near 115 to 118 as the southwestern ridge amplifies further. The communities that spent late June dodging tornadoes and flash flooding are going to be fighting 100-degree heat by early July. That is the kind of pattern whipsaw that catches people completely off guard. I am flagging it now, 3 weeks in advance, so your community has time to prepare. Let me also walk you through what a Super El Niño Week 2 pattern means specifically for the heat risk picture, because this connects directly to the derecho threat. The WPC Days 3 through 7 hazards forecast for June 25th through June 29th shows the upper ridge building across the desert southwest and eventually expanding eastward. That ridge acts as a cap over the southern plains and eventually the Midwest. Below the cap, temperatures are building. Dew point temperatures in the upper 60s and low 70s begin returning to the lower Mississippi Valley and eventually the Ohio Valley by late June. When you have surface temperatures near the mid-90s, dew points in the upper 60s, and then a mid-level ridge that caps convection, you're building a pressure cooker. The moment a shortwave trough comes through and lifts that cap, the stored energy is released explosively. That is the setup for a derecho event, and that is exactly what the Climate Prediction Center Week 2 pattern shows setting up from June 30th through July 6th. AccuWeather specifically described derecho events as being capable of winds that can exceed 100 miles per hour, strong enough to flatten cornfields and trigger power outages that last for days in the summer heat. The 2020 Iowa derecho, which caused approximately $11 billion in damage, struck in August during a very similar large-scale pattern. I am not saying the next event will be that large. I am saying the ingredients are aligning in a way I have not seen at this point in the summer season in recent years. CSU's analysis showed that the entire United States coastline has only a 24% chance of a major hurricane landfall this season, compared to a 43% historical average. El Niño, for all the severe weather and heat it is driving inland, is actively suppressing the Atlantic hurricane threat. The trade-off is exactly what we are discussing today: amplified inland severe weather, prolonged heat events, and eventually late-season drought across the southern tier. And embedded within that weak, 2 ridge pattern is the threat that has my full attention heading into July, derecho season. The Climate Prediction Center seasonal analysis identified the most likely corridor running from South Dakota to central Kentucky, covering Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Minnesota, and eastern Nebraska, as the highest probability zone for derecho events this summer. A strong mid-level ridge locked in place, substantial instability building ahead of shortwave disturbances, a low-level jet activating overnight and channeling Gulf moisture northward. These are the 3 ingredients. When they align and persist from late June into early July, the result is the kind of widespread destructive wind event that makes national news and takes days to recover from. I think we see at least one significant derecho episode in this corridor before mid-July, based on the Week 2 and Week 3 extended guidance, possibly more than one. Have you ever lived through a derecho in your area? What was it like? Drop it in the comments and tell me which state you're watching from. Here is how I am framing the next 30 days for the viewers of this channel. This week, the immediate threat is the central United States storm corridor, with flash flooding the primary concern by midweek, and a new supercell window opening Thursday across the northern high plains. The upper Midwest gets another organized round of severe weather, Friday through Sunday. Then, starting around June 28th through the first week of July, the ridge consolidates, heat expands eastward, and the next major severe weather setup emerges from the plains ahead of the reloading trough from the Pacific Northwest. The models have been consistent on this broad sequence for days now. The framework is holding, and all of it is happening under the accelerating influence of what could be the most powerful El Niño in the modern observational record. The summer America was expecting is not this summer. The data made that clear weeks ago. Tomorrow I will be tracking the northern high plains severe weather setup very closely as that new shortwave trough approaches from the west. I want to see the latest GFS and European evening model runs before I finalize my thinking on the Thursday supercell window across Wyoming, Colorado, and southwestern South Dakota. The SPC Day 4 discussion flagged that area, and I think the event could be more significant than the current broad outlook suggests. Check back tomorrow for that update. One last thing before I let you go. This time of year in the central United States moves fast. A setup can go from marginal to significant overnight with just one model run. That is why I am here every day working through this data so you do not have to check 5 different sources yourself. Tomorrow's video is going to be critically important because I want to assess the Thursday high plains setup in detail once I have the evening model runs in hand. If this breakdown gave you something real to work with today, hit the like button and share this with someone in the storm zone. The more people who understand the mechanism actually driving this summer, the better prepared every community will be for what comes next. Stay sharp, stay weather aware. I will see you tomorrow.